We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Touchdown, Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight out! C.J. Burdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A hat-trick, a touchdown from Justin Herbert! Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Autzen!
All right, Duck fans, here we go. Welcome into another episode of the Ducks Rising podcast, sponsored by Backer. My name is Zachary, Neel. My co-host over there, the one and only Travis Rooke-Ley. Travis, what's up, man? How we doing?
Good to be back again. Seemed like a successful first week, so glad to hear all the positive reviews, all the listeners, everything. So excited for another run at it.
Absolutely. Before we get going, I just want to offer a resounding thank you to all of you guys out there. The support and the outreach that we've gotten from the listeners over the past couple of weeks since we announced the podcast and since we started releasing our episodes truly has been incredible. So thank you all for joining us in this venture. I promise you this, the best is yet to come.
Yeah, growing every day. Got some awesome alums on deck. You know, it's just cool to see all the, not only the fan support, but also, you know, former athletes, everything being involved. It's been exciting to, you know, connect from these guys, hear their stories, different things. So we're fired up.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about how people can get involved in Ducks Rising and support the program.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remind everyone, you know, this podcast is obviously presented by Ducks Rising itself. Ducks Rising is offering Oregon fans a unique opportunity, ever-changing world of college football with membership options starting as low as $10 a month. Unlike many collectives at other programs, Ducks Rising isn't just asking for your dollars, but we're providing like actual value and content in return. So not only do your dollars support, we always say the acquisition and retention of talent at Oregon, but you gain access to team news, recruiting and roster developments, live events, interviews with players, coaches, and staff. And I think this week was the perfect illustration of this with a lot of the recruiting news we're going to discuss here soon. You know, we were first on top of many of that stuff, and I feel like we covered that as well as anyone out there. So, you know, this is your chance to make an impact. You're supporting Oregon student athletes, strengthening our NIL program, and, you know, the thing we care about most, helping bring a championship to Eugene. So head over to ducksrising.com. Consider becoming a member today. That's the best way you can continue to support content like this.
Absolutely, and we're going to keep pumping that content out for you. If you subscribe, you won't be disappointed because we're throwing a lot at you. We released, 3 episodes last week. We've got another 3 episodes coming this week. And as we always say, we are ever growing, so more is to come. All right, let's get to some weekly housekeeping before we kind of get into the episode. First off, the Ducks Rising Film Room is dropping later this week. Jeff Schwartz dives into Mekhi Hughes' film from Tulane and breaks down what makes him such a dynamic and versatile runner. We haven't actually seen that breakdown yet at the time of this recording, but I'm super excited to just see what Jeff has to say. His breakdown last week of the 3 offensive line transfers was incredible, like very, very insightful as someone who, you know, I don't know the most about offensive line or like the techniques of blocking or like split stance and first steps. And so seeing him break all that down, I was like, wow, it kind of makes you realize how much you don't know about football, but there's a beauty in that since we've been following the sport for decades. I just love learning what I didn't know.
Well, I think for especially those of us who are diehards but maybe didn't play super late into our careers, focused on other sports or elsewhere, but obviously have been tuned in since day one, like it informs the way we can watch football moving forward. So it gives, for those of you who haven't watched this, like it gives you a look into things you can look for, whether that's live game, replay, whatever that is. It just informs and just makes you a smarter football watcher. So in addition to that, I was just excited to hear how much growth there is between those O-linemen. I think that the best thing Jeff did was he was not only pointing out all their strengths, but just like little technical things. You know, specifically, I think about that point with Emmanuel Pregnon's stance that's like going to supercharge that guy who's already really freaking good. So just gets you excited about the future and obviously gives you insights into what you can look for, you know, come the start of the season.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I can't wait to watch whatever film we get next, and like first thing I look at is going to be, all right, what's Emmanuel's stance look like? How wide is he? How narrow is he? It's just, never would have done that before. If you haven't yet, make sure to go check out the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner. Last week, Travis sat down with Marcus Harper to go over his time at Oregon and dive into the kind of the movement along the offensive line and how teams deal with that. This week, Travis and I both sat down with Tyrell Crosby and talked about his time at Oregon, what he's been doing since retiring, and then his venture into becoming a scuba diving master, which I thought was a very fun kind of like subset of that interview, me having scuba dived several times before. That was just not somewhere I thought that conversation was going to go. I thought it was fun.
And I feel like the offensive line is so on the top of minds for Duck fans right now, and just to be able to start our first 2 weeks, I think, with two former offensive linemen who have played at such a high level, I think the insights both of them have brought and just like taught me so much and, framed my thinking in terms of what this, transition is going to look like in the fall, what goes into continuity. I know our big question last week when talking about the offensive line is like, how quickly is this group going to come together before Penn State and really, be dialed in the right spot. So being able to talk to both those guys and what goes into that, get into that spot where, you have your best five ready to roll, that's been super fun to chat through.
Lastly, we've got an exciting announcement about the podcast. You may have already seen this on social media. We announced it on Monday, but we are thrilled to be bringing none other than Captain Comeback himself, Joey Harrington, into our world. Joey is going to be joining us for a weekly segment called Inside the Pocket with Joey Harrington throughout the season. He's going to give his take on, current events, things from a former quarterback's perspective. I've been working alongside Joey for a few years now. I am so excited to bring him into this. With him, Jeff Schwartz, all of the other former players on Alumni Corner, we're building out quite a roster here at the Ducks Rising Podcast Network.
Yeah, I think, I'm just honored and lucky to have these guys involved, in a project. These are the guys we grew up watching. And, my earliest formative memories of Oregon football was Joey, that 2001 year. So, just to be able to learn from him, chat through the game. We just got done recording with him and talk through the quarterback position, what goes into that, what goes into a quarterback battle come the fall, and you'll hear that later on in this episode. It's just been, it's special to connect with the alums that kind of shaped your fandom. So happy to have Joey aboard and looking forward to chatting with him throughout the fall.
As far as today's episode, we're going to dive into the recruiting world because a lot took place over the past week. A lot of good things, too. We'll then bring on Joey, like I said, for his first edition of Inside the Pocket, and then we're going to close it out with a new segment that we're going to do weekly called the Autzen Airwaves, where we simply take mailbag questions from our subscribers at Ducks Rising. Sound good to you?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, let's start with what took place last Thursday. 5-star edge rusher Tank Jones chooses Oregon over Alabama and Texas A&M. Travis, I'm going to simply clear the runway, man. You've been all over this one. We talked about it about a month or so ago that we were hearing that this was happening, but silence was the key. Take us through this process and kind of how it all went down.
Yeah, I think just me and you were happy that kind of the Tank discussion embargo is lifted on the Ducks Rising board. I know, credit to yourself as well. I know you posted a nugget before anything had been announced, month back or later, that you had been hearing good things when it came to Tank as well. So, that's one that I think late June, I remember posting that Oregon was feeling good about one of Wesley or Tank Jones. And I think a lot of Oregon fans took that as like, oh, we're getting Wesley back. When in reality, I think we were just starting to hear a little bit of the buzz on, hey, Tank's a little more in play than we think. So, that's one of those that just you feel like you have it in the bag, but I've been texting with you and others offline for weeks of just like, okay, let's have this actually come through and happen, because we've all been spurned by, the silent commit. I think what's different in today's day and age is a lot of these deals are a little more done than we're used to. So when you're talking NIL, signing contracts, thinking about stuff like that, I think it gives you a little more of a peace of mind. But it was... I was ready for it to happen.
Yes, it was a long time coming. But also, it was an interesting weekend because you contrast this Tank Jones silent commit for almost a month, contrast it to the Deuce Geralds, which we'll talk about in a second. He was in the boat for a long time, and then LSU came on late. We don't need to get deep into his yet. But it's one of those things where, we know in recruiting that anything can happen at any moment. So we were just kind of waiting for weeks. It's like, all right, this needs to happen soon because I'm just tired of it not being officially set in stone.
Yeah, and I think we do our best at Ducks Rising with our members. I think that many of them kind of read the tea leaves as the week's gone on, and we dropped obviously what we could. We've got a couple other people with connections to the program, and I think kind of led on what they could. So it's one of those things that's tricky because you always want to be the first. You always want to be the one to prove like, hey, this is the place to be. But at the same time, ultimately the important thing is the commitment follow through didn't happen and things stayed in the right spot. You never want to give a school like Alabama or especially Texas A&M with the money they have down there. You never want to give them any reason to feel like they need to up their offer by $500K. Like that's just not helping the situation at all. So I don't know. I'm just really proud of our community because they've proven time and time again that we can post information and share information and like it stays at Ducks Rising. And that's not the case everywhere. And so just in terms of kind of a plug for us and our members, it's just a big shout to them because information like this can be shared and we feel like we're a place to get that info and be able to discuss it, but at the same time have that actually follow through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really impressive to see a lot of stuff on that board that you don't see anywhere else, and it doesn't get out, which, as you said, credit to the members. I should have said this up front, but Tank Jones, number 18 player in the 2026 class, number 4 edge rusher, 14th highest rated commit in Oregon history. Also, this is my favorite thing, second straight year that Oregon has taken the number 1 ranked player out of Alabama and brought them to Oregon. Last year was Naeem Offord. So, this is one of those commitments, like, this is why you follow recruiting. There are a handful of those. Naeem was one last year. There's been several in our lifetime. Which we'll talk about later too. But Thursday was fun, man. It was a lot of fun.
I feel like I think of the Dan special every year, and I feel like he's always got a couple where I'm just like, yep, this is everything about what he's about and what the staff's about. Prioritizing a player, geography not mattering. Obviously, huge position of need and a high impact position. McAfee show, I think all of it blends together. As far as, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's been 3 Pat McAfee commitments this year, and we've won 2 out of 3 of them. With the other one being Ryder Lyons.
Ryder,
sure.
That was it. Yep, you're right.
Obviously having a hat on the table there, so I think just it plays into what's gotten Oregon to this point and continues to make. You're all over ESPN. You got a 5-star committing from the other part of the country. Your next 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are going to be in that same spot in a few years are seeing that. They want to be the next guy to pave that trail. You've seen a lot of the quotes come out. Same thing that Nacho said is what Tank Jones has said, which is like, I want to, pave my own trail, build a legacy on my own. You heard Jalen Lott say that. So I think just it all feeds into this machine that's being built.
Yeah. What I did love about the hat ceremony is you get the in-depth Twitter detectives to kind of look at the hat science. And there was like however many hats there were. All of them were very flat brim, except the Oregon one, which had a little bit of a bend in it. I was like, all right, he's tried that one on. I might have, I was 99% sure before that. When I saw the curved brim, I was like, all right, the Ducks got this one.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, where do you want to go next, Devon or Deuce?
Let's do Devon. Let's keep the good times rolling.
Okay, another composite 5-star cornerback. Depending on where you look, he's either the number 1 cornerback in the class or the number 4 safety. 247 Sports has him as that. Will likely play cornerback or nickel at Oregon. This has been in the works for quite a while. The Ducks were able to close it out. Gives Oregon 5 composite 5-stars in the class, tied for the most in the nation with Alabama and the most in program history. Take us through Devon.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that, like you said, I was told to feel good on as early as last January, I feel like. I mean, he's one I would have put in my probably 3 most likely players to become part of this class. But, man, I mean, you get going time. He's taking different visits. You just never know in this day and age. You never know if somebody's going to, offer something crazy. You never know how much a depth chart, coaching relationship, anything's going to matter. So, I think a ton of credit goes to Coach Wadood on this one. From what I'm told he's like a priority target from being out in Southern California, and that relationship really got us through the finish line. But, I mean, you had heavy hitters with big NIL money coming after this one. I know Husky fans are in their normal discussion mode right now of Oregon dropped a crazy bag, had the biggest offer. unless I'm being told the wrong information, I don't believe that's the case at all. I mean, you're going up against Texas, Michigan, and a desperate Washington team. So winning this one, while we were favorites all along, this was not just a layup. But obviously huge to get it through the finish line with being the sole, DB commit. And I think just the flexibility across the back end. I think this guy could probably be getting snaps early on anywhere. He could be nickel. He could probably get reps at safety, like I know some of the services have in that. So just a huge time commit, and just another cherry on top of a pretty freaking good class.
What I loved is that at the time of his commitment, it had been 50 days. Since then, I think it's 52, 53. No, 52 as we're recording this. 50 days ago from the time of his commitment, Oregon had the number 42 class in the nation. And since then, they added 4 5-stars, 4 4-stars, and then now have the number 7 class. We remember those days 50 days ago on the Ducks Rising board, where it was not always sunshine and rainbows, but I think it's been a lot of fun since then.
I think if this isn't the year that proves to Oregon fans that we've just got to trust the process, trust the board, trust the evaluation, trust the staff, then I don't think it's going to get much, slower in the spring or more challenging than this year. I think there was a lot of inherent challenges that this year ended up bringing. It didn't look like it at first. I mean, when I remember January, February conversations with staff, other people, I was thinking we were, going to have a number 1 class wrapped up in the spring, given the talent in California, given roster success, all that. But some challenges, presented themselves. USC got a little bit of their program together, made some good hires, making a little bit of a jump on the trail. Obviously, Washington pulled a couple guys. So there were tons of barriers come the spring, even into initially in the summer, that prevented us from making the splash that we wanted to. But hey, we sit here today, I think 3rd in one set of rankings, 7th in the other. Still some guys on the board. Dan's not going to go quietly come December. So, yeah. What complaints can you have?
None at this point. We've always said, trust in Dan and his staff, trust in Dan, trust in Marshall, trust in all of them. And this year kind of proved that, because a lot of people were, I wouldn't say skeptical, but at least questioning whether their strategy was right with the new NIL rules and everything going down, whether they had misevaluated some things. And now you look back, it's no, maybe they did, but they pivoted really well and they figured out how to get the guys in there. So credit to them. Let's talk about Deuce Gerald's one recruiting battle that Oregon did lose. Gerald's committed to LSU on Saturday. He's the number 95 player in the nation for the 247 Sports Composite. He was heavily favored to land with the Ducks for several weeks. Travis, what happened?
Yeah, I think it's one of those that has happened a couple other times this cycle. I think staff put him in a good position to close this guy. I think Deuce had said all the right things and probably had planned to be at Oregon for a while. I know that internally that was the feeling, but credit or discredit to LSU. I don't know how you want to think about it. Some people think paying a lot for a guy is bad. Other people say it's a sign of a good program. I probably land somewhere in the middle. But the key is, and we talked about it earlier, this staff isn't going to deviate from the board, from the resources allotted to certain positions, and from what they deem to be the amount of resources we should allot to a certain player. So I think I have no doubt Gerald's is probably going to be a good player. Is he irreplaceable? No. I think the staff probably agrees, and so you make your offer, and if another school comes in over top of that, you have a discussion and you think about what makes the most sense and you go from there. So obviously this staff understands the importance of defensive line recruiting, especially on the interior. They understand there's a need there. I'm going to be inclined to trust that evaluation and trust that they have a plan and are sticking to that plan. Others can, complain and say, oh, we should have thrown whatever we want at them. That's fine. But I'm just going to choose the former.
Yeah. Like I said, I think we learned to trust Dan and Marshall and their thing, their whole staff. So, moving forward with Tank and Benjamin in the fold, what does the future look like now for Oregon recruiting from here until signing day? Because most of the big names in this class are off the board, whether it's at Oregon or other schools. So there may be some flip targets. I know there's one reclassification target. We'll see what happens there. But what do you predict will kind of happen over the next few months as we get to December?
Yeah, I'm watching, like you mentioned, watching Jalen Brewster closely, 2027, number 1 rated defensive lineman in the country who, depending on who you talk to, is considering, leaning, not leaning. So I think he hasn't made a decision yet when it comes to a reclass for 26. I think no matter what class he ends up in, that's going to be a priority, like 1A target at the position, and one that you probably pay for. Not no matter the price tag, but that's one of those ones that you probably pony up for and have some resources allocated for. And then, I mean, the amazing thing about where the class is right now is I think you're at 17 commits. You're planning to sign between, 19 to 21, 22. So you can be extremely picky and choosy come the fall. Guys pop their senior tape. Guys come in with a good senior tape. You can make your move at that point with some resources still in the pot. And then I know a lot of Duck fans are banking on a ton of flips and flip season going crazy. Like, I'm not expecting as crazy of a November, December when it comes to that. I think a lot of the contracts that are in place these days do their best to mitigate that. I think it's going to take somebody to almost like test the waters. It's going to take someone who's signed and got a signing bonus at a school to be like, hey, thanks for the signing bonus. See you later. I'm going to go decommit and go to Georgia now. I'm curious like what that looks like and how that materializes, because I don't know that a school wants to be that school to like chase that money. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that's going to affect you in the future with other recruits and agents and so forth. So somebody's going to do it though. Somebody's going to try, and I'm really going to be interested to see what that follow-up is going to look like, because I think that will inform, is this going to be like crazy money season come December, November, or is it like most guys are locked in, but you're just going to have your typical, few guys pop back on the board?
Well, it's going to be a really interesting year because of the revenue sharing, because of the new NIL rules. We don't really know how it's going to play out. So I'm curious to kind of revisit this conversation in the middle of December and see what did happen. Because it's definitely hard to predict right now. We've always said that NIL is the wild, wild west, and it feels like this year kind of more than ever because there are so many guidelines and / rules in place that like we don't all completely understand. At least speaking for myself, I don't understand all of them. So yeah, I'm very curious to see it. You could tell me that USC loses 4 of their guys and 2 of them flip to Oregon, or you could say that nobody flips. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think we just have to remind Duck fans, what you said before, is this roster is in an incredible place. I listened to Joel Klatt's show today, preseason. He was doing his preseason top 25, and he spoke to the incredible roster that we have in Eugene. That's all in many places young roster. So D-line, for example, I know a lot of Oregon fans. We need interior defensive line. We need interior defensive linemen. Like, look at the depth chart right now. Look at who's on that roster. Look at who might leave. Like, yeah, we could use a body or two, but there is no position on this roster where it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We need this place. Like, the roster is in a great spot. It's healthy. It's deep. It's built across every position group. Guys are being retained. Guys are being developed. Like, there's no reason to freak out. Come fall, we'll make our presence known with some prep guys. And then most importantly, if we need to plug a spot or fill a spot in the portal, there's nobody in the country who has done a better job of that.
Yeah, that's very true. There's always the portal. Dan's very good there. All right, let's wrap up our recruiting talk for the day and get inside the pocket with Joey. Before we do that, though, Travis, can you tell me a bit about Backer?
Yeah, just a reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Backer BCKR. Backer is a new outwear company founded by an Oregon alum, combining high-performance materials from the outdoor industry with a sleek Oregon look. As someone who grew up in Eugene, I know the value of high-end apparel on football Saturdays, summer hikes, winter trips to the mountains. This gear checks every box. We just want to encourage all Oregon Duck fans to check out their amazing jackets, hoodies, hats, and more at backerbckr.com. Make sure to use the code RISINGFREE, free expedited shipping, and also 10% back to Ducks Rising. So check out Backer today. I'm rocking my cool one right now with the sleek Oregon logo. So just fired up about this partnership, grateful for their support, and encourage all Duck fans to check them out.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is a special day here on the Ducks Rising podcast. Last week, we unveiled the DR Podcast Network with our show, Jeff Schwartz Film Room, and the Alumni Corner, but we told you to be on the lookout for new ventures and additional expansion. It didn't take long for that first expansion to come. We are thrilled to welcome you all to Inside the Pocket with our good friend Joey Harrington. Joey, what's up, man? How we doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm honored that you consider me a good friend. Like that gets me right here. I appreciate it.
Despite our pre-pod conversation, yes, we actually are pretty good friends.
I think you're horribly wrong on a lot of your takes, but I think you're a kind person.
That's fair. I think a lot of the general public would actually agree with you on that. I broke it down earlier yes, kindness first. Yeah. I broke it down earlier in the episode, but just to reiterate, this is our new weekly segment. Rather than bring you on, a couple of times per season and break down things for an hour or so, we want to try and put some sprinkles of Joey on each episode, offering up 15 to 20 minutes for you to break down what you're seeing. How exactly we do that, I'm sure we'll figure out along the way, but getting you on board... Yeah, go ahead.
Let's be honest here. Like every conversation we have ends, hey, we're just going to talk for 15 minutes, and then 40 minutes later, it's, I got to go. So
exactly. But I mean, getting you on board, and part of this was, one of my biggest objectives when starting this thing alongside Travis. So I hope you know how truly excited we are to have you as part of this.
Well, I'm happy to be here, buddy.
As far as today goes, we want to talk about quarterbacks, unsurprisingly. There's a QB competition going on at Oregon's fall camp right now. Well, we all presume that Dante Moore will be named the starter. There are some interesting, ways to talk about it. I'll start here. How many true quarterback competitions have you been in during your career?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I technically, when I was a true freshman, the job was open, right? Because Graziani had just left. And so technically I was part of that conversation and had an interesting conversation with Bellotti that, after camp that year, which we can get to another time. But really, I mean, my sophomore, AJ Feely's junior year, and then, then by the time I got to Detroit, they draft you in the first round, they're going to give you a spot. And then I had a competition with Dante Culpepper in Miami with Nick Saban and the Dolphins. That was pretty much it. When I played in Atlanta, it was because things went south with Mike Vick. When I played in, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I backed up Drew to end my career in the NFL, and so it's an interesting position to be in, especially now with all the new, I guess, freedoms that these guys have, right? If you're in the NFL and you get signed to a contract, if you lose the job, you can't say, peace, I'm out of here. So yeah, I would not like to be in the position of any head coach trying to make these type of decisions, not just now for the now, right? But to plan on what your quarterback room looks like in the future.
Do you feel like there's, in your communication with coaches throughout your process, was there always a set of certain skills, things those coaches were looking for? Were they open with you throughout the competition and like, hey, we're looking for these certain things? Is it offensive dependent? Like, what does that process look like throughout the fall or leading up to games?
I mean, the type of things they're looking for is for you to be a good quarterback. I mean, and that looks different to everybody, right? I think the biggest thing, Jason Garrett was a quarterback coach in Miami. And what he always said is, no matter what it looks like, we need you to play winning football, right? No matter how you do it, play winning football. So that may mean throwing the ball away instead of forcing one into coverage. That may mean sometimes you got to, step up in the pocket, take a shot in the chest, and deliver a strike on a post route for a touchdown. Like there are all sorts of things. Sometimes it may mean getting a team out of a bad play and into a good one. Sometimes it may mean taking a sack because that's the best thing. Sometimes it's okay to punt on fourth down, right? Like, so it wasn't like the coaches were looking for you to do something specific or spectacular, but rather which player puts the team in the best position to be successful. And honestly, sometimes that's determined by the players around you, right? Sometimes a team may need somebody to be a little bit more mobile if they don't have the protection up front. Sometimes they may need a guy to be a little bit more accurate because they have the wide receivers. If you can just get the ball, the wide receivers can make the play. So it's always dependent on, I should say, it's not dependent on one thing, or they're not looking for one thing specifically, but rather kind of a general sense for what's best for the team.
I'm curious, how much does, you answered this a little bit, but how much does ownership of the offense matter in the competition? Say one QB has, more accuracy and the ability to push the ball downfield, but the other has a better control over the plays and the checks and the audibles, smaller things like that. If you were to put yourself in a coach's position, I know there's a million other factors that go into it, but what kind of ownership are you looking for from the coach? How big of a factor is that?
That's an interesting question. And I think my response to it would be, how much lack of ownership does the explosive player have? Right? That's because at a certain level, you have to have a basic foundational, understanding of what's going on. I had a conversation with, I'll never forget this. Neel was our offensive line coach when I was there. And after my sophomore year, he's like, all right, great. Did a good job. You did fine. Now the next step is understanding what all of my guys are doing. And then and then the next step after that is understanding what all the defensive guys are doing. Right. So it's not just like, hey, where am I handing it to the running back, or where am I throwing it to the wide receiver? It's understanding what the offensive line checks are, why they're making them. Hey, if somebody sees something else that you don't like, how does that affect you? How can you control it? So there are levels to it. You can be functional in an offense, like I was as a sophomore. Right? My sophomore year, I was plenty functional in our offense. We went 6-0 at the end of the season. Won 9 football games, and then it was like, hey, the next step. I don't think winning 9 football games is the goal for these teams, right? So there's the question: is which of the quarterbacks, whether it's explosive and not as much control over the offense, or can I deliver with absolute control of this offense? Which one of those fits your personnel the best?
When you think about like the Oregon quarterback room right now, you have 2 obviously guys battling for that job who have a lot of those raw skills. You hear about the arm talent of Dante Moore, Austin Novosad. Is that piece you're discussing with having command of the offense, having command of the field, is that the next level that maybe we've seen from the Oregon quarterbacks over the last couple of years? You heard Lanning and Stein and reference like Gabriel and Nix being like PhD level quarterbacks when it comes to that. Is that kind of that next level that you're discussing? Yeah, some of that comes from, having command of the offense. Some of that comes from just being what was doing like a 17-year college football vet. Like it's that there isn't anything that you can do that I haven't seen mentality. Like, all right, I already know what you're doing because I've seen this 100 times. That allows you to make decisions, that allows you to play quicker, that allows you to have that type of success. You mentioned arm talent. Like, I could give you a list a mile long of guys that have had arm talent that, couldn't even set foot on a field. So let's not, I would say, minimize how important it is to have a command of the offense. It's not like just if he gets it, he gets it. But we'll put him out there because he can throw the ball through a wall. Like we had a guy at Oregon who literally threw the hardest ball I've ever seen in my entire life. Had a stronger arm than DJ Shockley, had a stronger arm than Mike Vick, had a stronger arm than Byron Leftwich. I mean, we're talking about like this guy could literally throw the ball through concrete, and he could not function on a football field, right? So to compare arm strength and understanding of the offense, I don't think really is apples to apples, right? You must know what you and everybody else is doing out there if you're going to be successful. Now, there are varying degrees of that,
But that has to be the first thing that you know, or else you got no shot.
Have you ever been on the losing side of a quarterback competition? And if so, what's that like? I mean, going through that process and still having to like fight every week because knowing you still might get in there.
AJ Feely. I lost that competition coming out of camp. We went to Michigan State that first game, and Bellotti said, "Hey, AJ's going to start. I'm going to try and get you. He's 1A, you're 1B. It was really close, but I'm going to try and get you some time." He went out and threw for 300 against Michigan State. I never saw the field. Came back and ran through a couple of smaller schools at Autzen. I got in for some garbage time, and by week 4 or 5, I was clearly, not in the picture. The ironic thing in that was you never know when your opportunity is going to come, right? I would be lying if I said I hadn't thought about what my options would have been, right? Because I was looking at, I'd already sat 2 years behind Jason Moss and Akili, and then potentially sitting for another 2 years behind AJ. And I was like, I really want to sit here for 4 years to play one? Like that wasn't, that was something I had to weigh. And sure enough, AJ goes on a streak and of, about a game and a half where he really didn't play very well. And all of a sudden we get to Arizona, and halftime comes out and Bellotti tells me to take the headsets off, and there's no warning. Like you're in the game. And that's your opportunity. So had I not been ready for that, AJ would have just gotten the ball back and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So it's an incredibly difficult thing to do, to put aside the disappointment of not getting the job. However, and this sounds like such a cliche, but you never know when that opportunity is going to come, especially in football. Like it takes one person falling the wrong way, and all of a sudden the ball is in your hands, and you've got 50,000 people who are right on top of you and ready to let you know how you do.
Yeah. If we had to kind of take it to this year's competition and kind of forecast a little bit, what have you seen from Will Stein over the last few years? Like, what would you deem to be the things he's looking for? Or what makes a successful quarterback in his offense that these guys can bring? Do you feel like you can offer anything when it comes to that?
I can, or I feel like I could, but this whole, and I may be taking this in a direction that, that we didn't want to go, but if I'm paying somebody $5 million, or I'm paying one guy $2 million, and I'm paying another guy $200,000, and you give the job to the guy that you're paying $200,000, is that a good investment? Does that $2 million guy leave? Can you bank on having a backup quarterback for that moment when your starter does get hurt, which will happen during the year? Like that's the thing that I can't quite wrap my mind around. Whether it's Oregon or Georgia or anybody or Ohio State this year trying to pay, like the fact that these guys are getting paid massive amounts of money and have the absolute freedom to just pick up and say, no thanks, I'm out. It goes into the decisions that are being made by these head coaches and coordinators. It does. And that's so my answer to your question is, sure, you can run a list of things that Will Stein may be looking for, but what ultimately is going to come down to is, if I make Dante the starter, does Austin leave? If I make Austin the starter, does Dante leave? If I make Dante the starter, does Akili stay? Austin leaves and now Akili stays, because if you have this puzzle of like all the younger guys and these two guys, there are so many things that go into choosing positional players that are that are affected by whether or not, how much they're being paid and whether or not they'll stick around. And that's the reality of college football right now. And whether or not you think it's a great thing or a horrible thing, it is what it is. And that's the world we live in right now.
All right, we got to wrap it up there. Joey, I'd call it a successful first edition of the Inside the Pocket. Again, we are thrilled to have you on along for the ride with us here on the Ducks Rising podcast. Before we get out, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're going on with the Harrington Foundation this fall?
Yeah. We've actually had a great couple years of fundraising and have been able to increase our scholarship this year. So this year we gave 5 $25,000 scholarships to students around the state. After 4 years at this amount, we'll have 20 students in school all around the state of Oregon, which is, I think it's pretty fantastic. One of the ways that we raise money is through our bourbon barrel benefit, which is coming up in the fall. I was able to go out to Jim Beam and pick out a nice little barrel of 10-year Knob Creek that'll be coming back to us this fall. And so we'll be raffling some of that stuff off. And I love how supportive not just the University of Oregon community, but the state of Oregon has been with our foundation, and understanding that like our job as Oregonians is to make sure that this state thrives, not just now, but in the future. And I appreciate all the support, and I'll definitely let you know when it lands.
That's great. Well, we're thrilled to have you. We can't wait to talk to you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Travis, we're going to close out the show a new way from here on out, and that's by taking questions from our Ducks Rising subscribers on the Autzen Airwaves. If you are a subscriber on Ducks Rising, we asked you to write in with a testimonial about why you love being a member and a question for us to answer. Travis, what did we get this week?
Yep, let's do it. Super excited about this segment, and we'll hop right into it with our first question from Jesse K. Jesse says, "Why I love being a Ducks Rising member. This community feels like a brotherhood/sisterhood from the leadership all the way to the fans. It's enjoyable. It feels like there are no questions that go unanswered. The expertise from recruiting expert to players to passionate fans is second to none." Appreciate that, Jesse. Question: besides quarterback, what position group must step up the most for us to be in position for the Big Ten championship? And what player are you most forward to watching this year?
I'll take the first question. Just by itself, everything starts up front. I mean, if that offensive line has any holes, then things are going to fall apart, especially with a young quarterback, especially with an inexperienced wide receiver group. Like, it seems like the cheap and easy answer, but that offensive line has to be solid once again for this team to compete for a Big Ten championship and make it back to the playoff.
It may be cheap, but it's the right answer.
It is.
For all the reasons you said, I think that group is integral to some big road games this year. Obviously, I think your 3 hardest games, honestly, are going to end up being the 3 road games at Penn State, Iowa, and Washington. I think for that reason, like obviously having an offensive line group that's dialed and in sync is a huge one. I think if I had to go off the board with offensive line at all, I think maybe you go secondary just because of the newness of that group and how that group has, I don't know, not entirely prevented, but been a piece of our losses the last few years, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So I think we're so excited. We talked last week about just like the length in that room, the potential in that room, the incredible depth in that room. But, nothing's a sure thing. And I think there are obviously some questions that need to get answered in the fall of who are going to be those guys that step up and obviously contribute early in the year.
I'd agree with that. What about player for you? I think there's like 3 or 4 answers that we could easily go with and not be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like for some reason I always lean offense on this. I don't know if I'm just an offensive guy or I like watching offense more, but once again, to your first one, I feel like the cheap answer is like a Kenyon Sadiq or a Mekhi Hughes, or
Decoy Moore.
Yeah, I mean, but they just are my answers because they're freaks. I mean, you saw Bruce Feldman's freak list that, came out today and Kenyon Sadiq on there. That's one guy where I think the combination of size, skill, potential, like how just incredible and well-spoken of a person he is and how highly the staff talks about him, just the complete full package popping up as, number 1 tight end in the country for next year. I think that's going to be a guy that Duck fans are going to grow to love pretty quick, and then he's probably going to be out the door before we know it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the defensive side, and not to just be different, but I feel like this is my answer. It's Dylan Thieneman. I just, Oregon, this is not to be like, mean to any of the past safeties, but Oregon has lacked elite safety play since Javon Holland. And I just, like you said earlier, that's kind of been one of the detriments of this defense is smaller, less agile safeties that have kind of given up some things in the back end. I can't wait to see what the presence is that he brings to this defense in the secondary and just the command of the defense overall. He's so good. I can't wait we've got Jeff, I think he's going to break him down sometime soon. He said it's going to be more of a project going through his tape and finding those plays, but I can't wait to see him break him down a little bit more because he's just the things he does in the back end are so impressive. And once you get him in Dan Lanning's defense, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, heart goes out to Jeff for having to watch a bunch of Purdue tape, but I think I think for just as much he's probably going to be so huge for us. I mean, for him to go from having to be that guy, clean up every play to being able to suddenly be in a back end with a bunch of ballers and, 6'2" dudes that can run like crazy and jump like crazy. I think that's going to be a win-win in every way.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right, let's go to the next one. This comes from Dre. Why I love Ducks Rising. I've always gravitated to all things Duck football since I became a fan. Back in 2005, when I came across my guy Colin King, shout out to Colin on Instagram, he stood out because the intel, he seemed to be a step or two ahead of any of the other Duck pages and channels. After he had the inside scoop on Jet Washington's commitment, I knew I had to become a Ducks Rising member. Since then, Ducks Rising has already more than proved its money's worth as far as coverage, insider info, and just constant engagement with other diehard Duck fans. Love that. Appreciate that, Dre.
Shout out Colin.
Yeah, big shout out to Colin. What do you guys think is more likely for the 2025 season? 2 backs rush for over 800 yards or 4 wide receivers go for 600?
That's a tough one, man.
I've been thinking about this since I saw it yesterday, and I still
don't know. It's such a unique area because both positions are kind of they have the ability to be so spread out, Like, I could easily, I think Mekhi Hughes is going to have 800 yards. Will Noah Whittington get there? That's my hang-up. I think there'll be, a couple receivers that have 600 yards, probably Tacorian, I would say J-Mac maybe, or Kyler. But will 4 guys get there? I don't know. That's a big bar to clear. I would say running back, just because I think that's going to be a more of a timeshare. And just kind of like an even split between the two. But if I had to put money on one of these two, I don't know where I would go.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think a second guy getting to 800 is so hard back there. We talked last week about how we feel like we have finally depth, so you don't really just need to have 2. You actually have 3, possibly 4, which leans me away from that. I don't know. If we still had Junior Adams, I'd be a little bit more inclined to say 4 to 600 because I know he hated rotating and wanted to keep the same guys out there for 99% of all snaps. I still personally would lean a little bit just to the 4 wide receivers just because maybe 4 guys rise to the top and maybe you have a clear 4 who separate themselves and you combine that with Dante and probably a few more shots, some bigger plays. Maybe you get a guy who has, 20, 30 receptions, but a bunch of them are big plays down the field you get there. So I don't know. Either way, I think that it speaks to the depth, and I think it's a great question to think about.
Who would your 4 be if you were to pick them right now?
Tacorian.
Yeah.
J-Mac.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah, here's the tough one.
Malik Benson, because he gets a bunch of deep balls. That's true. Yeah, I think those are probably the 4. We could have. You could have substituted 6 other guys in there.
Like Kyler could easily be in that. I think he could absolutely be there. It's funny, like looking at Oregon's offense, I think would be a terrible fantasy football offense because like I don't think any one person is going to have that league winning year, but you're going to get 12 people that have like, very solid years. So you kind of don't know which player to play each and every week. It's just one way I like to look at it.
Well, it's such a far cry from the last 2 years. I mean, the last 2 years it was like Tez, and then maybe some Troy and some Stewart. I mean, I feel like if you divided up all the catches at wide receiver the last 2 years, those 3 guys must have had over 75% of them. So, I mean, you combine a bunch of talent with a bunch of bodies in there and a bunch of balls to be caught, somebody's got to be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to the next one. I love Ducks Rising because I'm contributing to help Oregon bring the first natty to Eugene. Travis and the whole staff and Lockfors have been very transparent and responsive with everything. The info is, for the most part, the first to hear about it, and the community is radio silent about spreading it, like we talked about earlier. Question: me being a younger fan, just turned 24, I'm curious on what recruiting was like before Oregon blew up and became a powerhouse and premier team.
You can take this one more than I can, because I grew up a Duck fan, but was not super into recruiting until I started at DucksWire with USA Today, which was in 2020. So I remember the Kayvon recruitment. I remember somewhat about the D'Anthony recruitment, but I was not super in the weeds like I am now. So you go ahead and take this one. I'm going to lay out.
Yeah, I mean, the wins, I'll just say the wins, like a Tank Jones, were just fewer and hard to come by. And they had, the stars had to align. First of all, it almost always had to be a West Coast guy or someone with connections. I mean, we pulled guys. Haloti Ngata was a 5-star out of Utah. I still remember Jonathan Stewart's recruitment out of Washington. He was a 5-star. Everyone wanted him. Obviously, a lot of Duck fans who were closer to my age, older, remember D'Anthony Thomas out of Los Angeles. But these were very certain one-offs, and they stuck out to us, and I still remember them today because they were that. Otherwise, I mean, the norm was just, you were in the top 5 with UCLA and Arizona State and Utah and Stanford for a guy, and we got our fair share and had top 25 classes, but you were never, you just didn't see Oregon in the game with an Ohio State ever. And if you saw Oregon in the game with a USC, you were not confident. We had, I remember Juju Smith's recruitment. He was all set to flip and come to Oregon, stars aligned everything, last minute pull of USC. I can't remember how many guys USC we thought we had them and they took them. Ray Mahaluga, I remember that one, I think 2006-7 range. So while we're confident now in winning recruitments, that was not the case. It was holy cow, we actually could get this guy from USC. That was unfathomable.
So go back to 16-year-old Travis sitting at South Eugene High School in math class. You tell him down the road we have a year we get 5 stars, and it's not even that amazing. It's kind of yeah, all right, this is what Oregon's doing. Would you ever believe that?
You just couldn't. Scott Frost didn't believe it. He
didn't believe a lot of things.
He told everyone he could about that. Chip definitely changed it just because the flashiness, the offense started to pull guys that fit that offense so well, like a D'Anthony. But you just look at the roster composition. I saw some clips from the title game in 2010 the other day, and it was most of the offense is just 3 stars. Great players, developed incredibly, huge credit to the staff, but it's just 3 stars across the board. You look at the offense even in 2014, none of those guys on that roster were guys you won nationally. They were guys maybe you'd win out on the West Coast. So just the profile of the roster in general, the base talent, and who you're winning battles against has completely changed.
Yeah, and it's just, it's not even only the 5-star wins. What it is now is just those commitments that Oregon fans, they care about them, but they're not celebrating over a Kaloy Kelly or, there's several guys in this class that it's those are really nice pieces, nice blue chip players. And it's okay, you're not doing backflips over them, but now the roster is made up of those guys, and that's your depth. And then you get the cherries on top of the Tank or a Devon. That's how that championship roster is really built.
Yep, 1,000%. All right, we'll take one more today. This one's from Josh. Why I love Ducks Rising. I'd always been a bit mystified by the idea of an NIL collective and had a desire to be directly contributing to the program. At the time, there was only Division Street. I'm not a company capable of helping at the level they want. Then Ducks Rising came out. I was interested but skeptical. Once they announced TRL, was joining the team. His reputation and a little pressure from my Ducks Discord led me to trust it way more. Since then, it has become the place for inside info. Appreciate that, Josh. And just to kind of add to that, I think that that's one of our other big missions here, not only with the pod, but in general, of just like educating Oregon fans about this new space. I mean, I think that we're still catching up on it. It's changing by the day. So just for us to be able to spread the word on it, why it's important, why Duck fans need to rally around it is a huge piece of this. Question, this may be specifically for Joey, but Zach and I are going to tackle it. Assuming you have watched Bo and Dylan before their time as Ducks, what are some hallmarks Duck fans can see regarding Will Stein's QB development? What can we look to see where he has left his march with the current quarterbacks?
For me, it's, I don't have the QBI. And I wish we had this question. We could have asked Joey about it, but it's kind of, he gets his quarterbacks to play in his system really well. I think we saw that with Bo. We saw that with Dylan. Bo especially, in his time at Auburn, he had a knack for kind of going off script and trying to make the home run play. And what I think, it was Stein and Dillingham, they did really well, is just trying to, it's not really putting a leash on him, but just like confining him a little bit and saying, hey, you don't have to make the home run play every time. Will talked about this last week that, 5-6 yard plays at a time are great. You're going to win games doing that. And if the defense sometimes gives you a home run ball, take it. But, mistakes are so costly in this game where if you could just kind of march down the field methodically, that's what they're going to do. And I think that they're doing that with Dante this year. I think they did it really well with Dylan. They did it really well with Bo. That's what I think Will Stein's mark is on this offense and the quarterbacks for me. Yeah,
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think it's just like having the ball is the most important thing.
Yeah.
You can take your 40, 50-yard shot when it's there, and I think we will, but 2nd and 10 is a heck of a lot harder than 2nd and 4. And I just think like that, I know Duck fans love to armchair quarterback and hate on it during the game, and there are times where I think that Bo, and especially Dylan, was a little bit gun-shy. I think even Bo was his first year, and I think that you talk through that and figure that out, but the point of the offense is to stay on the field, move down the field, especially, I love the 4th down aggressiveness. If we can just get over the 50, now you suddenly have 4 downs. Mm-hmm. And your odds of converting 10 yards on 4 plays goes up exponentially. So for me, I almost think of our drives as like, we just need to get our first 2 first downs, and then we're like in 4 down territory, and our chances of scoring go up a crazy amount. That's like legitimately how I've had to reframe my mind over the last couple of years. I'm just like, okay, we got the ball at the 30. Let's get 2 first down. Let's get over the 50, and then we're cooking, and we're definitely getting points this drive. And I think that that's just a Stein philosophy that, coupled with Dan's aggressiveness, obviously just like has proven to work.
Well, and what you said at the start, the fact about owning the ball or just having the ball being the biggest key, that's a team philosophy. We've talked to Joe Lorick, the special teams coordinator, and we've asked him before, like, what are you looking for in a punt returner or a kick returner? Like someone who's explosive, someone who can make guys miss. He's like, no, I'm looking for someone who can catch the ball and not fumble it. Because if you get the ball and give it to our offense, we're winning the game. Like, as long as we don't turn the ball over, that's what matters. So, just they have this philosophy of owning the ball, and it's just like that's not something you really think of as winning football games. But when you have the talent on offense that they have, having the ball is the biggest key to the game because you're going to score points.
I will, for my life, always remember Jonathan Lloyd, 2014 punt returner. And he just caught the ball every time. Yeah. And for as awesome as it is to have a return guy back there, that is by far the most important thing. I would 1,000 times out of 1,000 take a guy who's just going to catch the ball every time. I don't care if you fair catch it every time. Like, we have good enough offenses to handle that nowadays, but you're spotty guy who's going to try to catch the ball with 4 guys around him. It gives me a heart attack every time.
Which, part of that's really painful to say because as 2 people who grew up in the Cliff Harris era, we know how fun it is to watch that. But yeah, you're right. I would rather have Jonathan Lloyd because you got to own that ball.
Yeah, 1,000%. Well, just want to give a huge shout out to all the members. Great questions this week. This is going to be a regular thing for us. So we're just excited to hear from you guys and get you guys involved, and appreciate you for this week. And this will be something we'll be doing every week, so look forward to next week.
Absolutely. Let's wrap it up there. Just another reminder, if you're listening to this, to go check out Jeff Schwartz's Duck Rising Film Room, which drops later this week. We also look out for the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner with Tyrell Crosby. That's going to drop on, I believe, Thursday, at least later this week, so look out for that. Again, while this podcast and these separate videos are free right now, once conference play begins in week 3 of the season, the videos are going to be for subscribers only. So if you are not hooked up with Ducks Rising yet, now's the time. Head over to ducksrising.com and sign up. Remember that 97% of all proceeds are going back to the athlete in the form of NIL, so it truly is your best way to help contribute to the team and help Dan Lanning bring a championship to Eugene. Our plan is to be back on next week and continue our preview of the season. We will have Joey on for another edition of Inside the Pocket. Videos with Jeff and the Alumni Corner will be continuing to churn out as well. Travis, you got anything to add before we get out of here?
Just grateful. I mean, this has turned into a pretty exciting venture. You know, I never thought I'd find myself talking football with yourself and Jeff and Joey and Tyrell, you know, in a week, and just the expertise and, you know, insight they bring and just the passion they still have for the university. It's just cool to share that with them. And, you know, we're just excited to be able to offer this to Duck fans across the board, and just encourage people, you know, this is only possible by your membership. And just check out ducksrising.com. Consider jumping aboard today. Super low monthly commitment, $10 for your first month. If you don't like it, I appreciate you trying. But our speaking of roster retention, our retention numbers are pretty good over there. So I just encourage people to check it out, and we feel like you won't regret it.
I'll add to that gratefulness too, because like when we started talking about this several months ago, like I thought it was you and me on a podcast, we'd be talking once a week. It's like already grown into something that I never thought it would be. Like I didn't think we'd have the Jeff Schwartz video, the Alumni Corner, have Joey on for the weekly segment, more stuff to come that we can't talk about yet. It's like all of this stuff, it's not really, it didn't fall in our laps because we definitely made it happen, but it's gotten a lot bigger than I thought it ever would already, which has been really cool to see. So I cannot wait to see this continue to grow once we get into the season.
Yep, more room to grow, and excited to actually talk some real football, not just projections one of these days.
Yes, real football. It's coming soon. All right, check us out on YouTube. You can find the Ducks Rising podcast on Apple or Spotify. And if you'd be so kind, give us a rating, give us a review. That really helps us build this thing. You can follow me on social media at Zachary C. Neel. You can follow Travis at Travis Rooke-Ley. But most importantly, go over to Lockerverse, check out Ducks Rising, subscribe now, and support the program. Let's rise together. We'll talk to you guys next week.